Okay, so now we've moved slightly further west of the country, and we're starting to look at NDBs and relative bearing. So firstly, for your situational awareness, just to help you build where we are. So we've got the... Oh, actually, you can see Bristol Airport just over there. You can see the lights. So there's Bristol Airport. So we're down in the west, and this is what we're set up with. So first we're looking at the relative bearing and how we're going to use that and calculate that. So let's pretend this is a fixed compass card. It is a moving one, as you can see, because I can move the heading around to be the aircraft heading and then make it look like it makes a lot more sense. But for the moment, we'll treat it as a fixed compass card. If you were reading this, firstly, we've done a select identify display. Now, if you've got an old Bendix King NDB like this, or ADF, you can change the knobs, or the large number with the big knob, the smaller knob for the tens, and then you have to somehow do some magic clicks to do the single digits. Then we just change the frequency like so. So that is how we'd do it. We've displayed that, and we would have listened to this for the Morse code identifier of the BRI, Bravo Romeo India. So let's pretend we listen to that. So coming over to our fixed compass card, if you were reading this directly, the arrow ahead, just a revision here really, the arrow ahead shows the nav aid effectively. So remember we said about the arrow head points to home, because it's a known location on the ground and we're aware that exactly where it is, its location. So that's a safe place to be in most circumstances. So home has an M in it, so QDM is how you'd read, or where you'd read from the top. So the arrowhead is QDM, and then the tail is going away from the NDB. So that's leading you to the unknown. So from the NDB, from has an R in it, QDR at the end. So QDR at the tail, QDM at the head. Looking at this, if I said to you, what would you fly to get towards the NDB, you might be very inclined to say, oh, you'd fly a bit like the VOR. You'd fly a 040 radial inbound, and that would be it. If you ignore this for a second, if you was flying this, well, firstly, if we was flying the 040 radial inbound, we'd need to fly in still wind conditions, a heading of 040 degrees. 040 is to the left of where we're currently going. So what does that mean for us? Well, going back to the relative bearing, on a fixed compass card, we need to do that equation, remember? Magnetic heading plus the relative bearing equals your QDM. So that equals your track or bearing to head towards the nav aid, or the NDB in this case. So if I was using that, the difference between the top or the nose of the aircraft, so effectively ignore the numbers for a second, regardless of what is set here, this aircraft is always the same direction where we're going. It's always north, nose up. So, ignoring the numbers for a second, we know the NDB is to the right of us by a certain amount of degrees. How many? Well, let's use 000 north as a start on a fixed compass card. Add the 10s to where the arrowhead's pointing. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 35, 40, let's call it about 38. So the NDB to get to the QDM is going to be 38 degrees to the right of what we are. So the relative bearing at the moment is 38 degrees. Let's round it up, because by the time we've actually flown forward, it might be 40. So let's call it 40 degrees, the relative bearing. Now, magnetic heading plus relative bearing is QDM. What is our magnetic heading? Call it 050 degrees. So, heading 050 degrees plus 40 degrees, because the arrow is pointing 40 degrees to the right of where our nose up is effectively. So our track or heading, the bearing is 40 degrees to the right. Our QDM to get to the NDB is 090 degrees. Kind of killing two birds with one stone here. That example there is a fixed compass card. Now, if I said to you, we've got a moving compass card. Hello. So, that's what a fixed looks like. Moving compass card is simple. Much easier, no maths required. So, we want to set our moving compass card to the aircraft heading, 050 degrees, or 05. If you have a look now, that's our aircraft track. So the QDM automatically reads, without any maths, 090 degrees. We will do another example, but firstly, that is a moving compass card. Much easier, there's no heading plus bearing equals QDM. It's very much, what's the heading, 050, set it at the top. Our QDM is 090. How do we work out QDR? Effectively, the same equation, plus or minus 180 degrees, because again, it's just a tail, isn't it? So let's say it was the fixed compass card again. We've got 40 degrees to the right of the aircraft, heading 050, so 50 plus 40 is 90, and then that's our QDM. If you want to find your QDR, that's to the tail end, you just go and look, or you could do it two ways. You could either go, well, the tail is from 0 to 220 degrees around to the right, so 50 plus 220, that's going to be your QDR. So 50 plus 220, that's going to give you 270, so you would track 270 degrees. But you could also make it a bit easier if you don't want to add big numbers. So you could go, QDM we worked out as 090, plus 180, gives you 270. So it depends how you want to work it out, but you're going to get the same answer. Now, it becomes a bit more difficult when you're going, I don't know, say the aircraft heading's 330 and it's down to here. So let's, for example, say 330 plus 40, 330 plus 40, that gives you a heading of 370. Now, bearing in mind a compass rose only goes up to 360 degrees, so easy maths in this one, but 330 plus 40 is 370, or 360 plus 10 is the heading or track of 010 degrees, if you know what I mean. So the equation or maths gets a bit heavier when you're flying along manually and you're having to add over, or you could do 370 minus 360, and that's going to give you your new heading of 010 degrees anyway. Or same thing, you could work it out with a nice moving compass card to give you the relative or QDM straight away. So QDR is effectively the same thing. You could either do magnetic heading plus relative bearing equals QDM plus or minus 180 degrees, because that's going to give you the tail, or you could just work out from here to the QDR, I need 220 degrees, 050 plus 220 is 270. I'll leave it up to you which way you want to work it out, but both ways it's the same thing, just one might be a bit longer than the other, depending how good your maths is. So, going with this, a fixed compass card, we established we need a QDM of 090 degrees, and that would make sense looking outside the aircraft. So the BRI is based at Bristol Airport, so 090 degrees is due east, so that's over there. So, let's unpause and fly that. So we're going to take a right turn, 090 degrees, and what you're going to see, ideally, is the NDB needle will point directly up. So now you can see we're tracking a QDM to the BRI. That's now straight ahead of us. You can see the pappies there. And what you can see, how do we know, is because on our fixed compass card, the ADF now is pointing directly ahead. Now, you could be lazy and just point the aircraft in a direction until the ADF needle is pointing nose up, but do the maths, that's what your examiner would want to see, but also it makes sure that you've got a reference for a track for your QDM, and then you can, adjust for wind. So always use the equation. So that's how we track to it. We're turning towards it, and of course, just like a VOR needle, it will move. Let's say the wind's blown us slightly right of track. The needle moves like this. So to be able to get back to the top, the needle to the top, we need to position our heading similarly to a VOR to the left of the needle. So the needle's head has moved to the left. If we moved back to our original track or QDM that we were flying of 090 degrees, you'll see the needle's actually now moved. So let's just roll out on our heading. Again, we're getting closer to the NDB, so it is going to be slightly different, but see that it's slightly left of us. So what we need to do is just similar to a VOR. We need to make a very slight left turn, put the heading to the left of our QDM. We said 090. Let heading to the left, and now we've pushed the head back to the target, and now we can go back to 090. And hopefully we'll roll out 090 degrees, and with the NDB needle pointing straight up. So that is how you would track an NDB effectively. Now it's slightly moved because my autopilot heading only moves in 10s. I could do it more minor, but that's not a problem. But for the general idea of an NDB, that's how it would work. So tracking the tail, you have to, what's the best way to say this? So in commercial training and infantry flight rule training and things like that, you are taught with NDBs you push the head and pull the tail. So we just saw us push the head. The NDB needle, the arrowhead, moved to our left, so we had to push the head back to the original number we wanted, which, if you remember, the NDB needle was pointing 350. So I pushed the head, I put the aircraft heading less than 350 degrees, or in our case, to the left of 080 degrees, and we pushed that head back round to the right towards nose track up. I hope that kind of makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain and demonstrate at the same time, but hopefully on review of watching the video you'll be able to understand it a bit. So let's say, just in this case, forgetting numbers and or directions, let's say I want to pull this tail of the NDB needle to a heading of 010 degrees on this compass card. So what I'd need to do is literally pull the tail. So for me to move the tail right, I need to go right. So you see my heading here, ignore numbers and directions. I'm moving it to the right to now pull the tail around to the right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the same thing. We're going to look at a QDM again, and we're going to work out with a fixed compass card again what our heading, or QDM, will be, sorry. So we're going to look at the fixed compass card, and then we'll look at the moving compass card again, just as a second separate example. So we have worked out fixed compass card. We need to work out how many degrees this is. So you can see it is, if I active pause this again, because the needle's going to continuously move as we track away or south across it. So the current needle is 245. By the time we work this out, it will probably be 250. So I'm doing 250 for now. That is from 0 on your fixed compass card. That's 250 degrees around from our aircraft track. So just got to keep it going in this direction for the time being. So remember, we need to, that's our relative bearing. So 250 degrees around right from us is our relative bearing. We need to look at our heading, because remember the equation for a fixed compass card only, because there is no equation for a moving compass card. The fixed compass card equation is magnetic heading plus relative bearing equals your QDM. So relative bearing, as we just worked out, 360 or 000 round to the arrowhead is 240, 250. 250 is the relative bearing. Our heading is 195. So 195 plus 250 is 445 degrees. What would we do now? Well, we kind of touched on this before, and this is why I wanted to do this example, is just to show you how, show an example on how to work out the QDM when your number goes over 360 degrees. It's 445 is our magnetic heading plus the bearing. But again, a compass road only goes up to 360 degrees. So we need to do 445 minus 360, and that gives us a QDM of 85 or 0.85 degrees. That would make sense, right? Because if you look at our heading, a general gross error check is the arrows going slightly below a line east-west between here. So if we did east-west here and slightly below, it's going to be slightly diagonal just towards the east. So that would kind of make sense if you transposed this arrow onto this instrument here. So 0.85 is our QDM. So I'll run that again just for an example purpose. Relative bearing is 250 degrees from 0 to 250. Equation is magnetic heading 195 plus 250 equals 445. Compass rose only goes up to 360 degrees, so 445 minus 360 is 85. So now if we unpause this, and we're going to now take a heading, or a turn, sorry, to 0.85. So 090 degrees, 0.8085 is set up perfectly. So as we're turning towards, again, you can see where the NDB is based off of the GNS 530 here. Airport is where the NDB is, so you can see it's not due east of us, it's slightly north of east. So 0.85 is a sensible number. I promise I'll get to the right bit shortly. Right, so here we are. We've rolled out on what we worked out to be our QDM. And if we have a look at our fixed compass indicator, it's effectively pretty right. Now, as we've taken that turn and the wind's blown us slightly, our radius has been greater than what we anticipated, so it might be more like 0.83. We're tracking towards it, and of course, like I said, we'd need to push the head to get it back to where we need. If the needle was coming off to the right because of drift, we're drifting to the left, we'd need to point the aircraft nose to the right of the needle, so then the needle's now this side, and we'll fly that until it's moved the amount of degrees that we required it to move. So say it's gone, in this case, right of us by 10 degrees, we're now going to move the needle 10 degrees to the left by turning to the right, like such. And then we'd be able to push the nose back 10 degrees. So then when we'd roll back, it would be moving from this position back to our track up. Now, it's quite difficult to understand that. I hope you get to have a play with that. Or if not, try and force a situation where your QDM is now not tracking the NDB. So move left and right of the line, fly for a couple of minutes, and then try and work your way back to getting the QDM to be correct. Now, what I'm going to do is just put our aircraft back on a 195 heading, just to show you the moving compass card example of the same scenario. Now again, the airport is up here on the hill, so it is going to be slightly different because we have moved from the original position that we started in. So please bear that in mind. So coming back to 195, I'll pause it again to work out this. We'll do a different example with a moving compass card and show you just how easy it is. So we are on a heading of 195. Going to pause that there. So heading of 195, the same scenario as before. We're now going to look at our fixed compass card, and in this case you can see it's slightly different by 20 degrees compared to the previous example. But how would I know what our QDM is from here? Now, if you've worked it out or remembered from the first example when I discussed the moving compass card, you'll know it's as easy as forgetting the maths and going, our heading is 200-210. We're going to just set this so 205 is being covered by our aircraft track up. And now you can see our QDM straight away is a QDM of 071. So by the time we take a turn, it might move round to 065. But now we've got a rough ballpoint on where to turn. So that's your moving compass card. Remember, the ADF, only the needle moves relative to the aircraft's position and track to where you're pointing, not to the card. So now you can see, well, it's actually 205 now. Well, no, it's not, because look at the heading, 065. So if we set 065, guess what? That's the exact number that we worked it out to be. So now we can track that all the way to the NDB. And again, same as a VOR, once you get overhead the NDB, it doesn't have a cone of confusion so much, but it will get to a point where it's very sensitive as you get closer to the NDB, and a point where when you pass overhead or just by it, the needle will completely swing. So effectively, as you're overhead an NDB, it's going to act a little bit like the to and from flag. Once you pass towards it, it's going to have a 2, the arrowhead is your 2 to go home. You fly overhead and the needle's going to swing around, so now you're tracking a QDR away from an NDB. So guys, I hope that's made sense. Any questions, please do drop one of the pilot training department mentors a message. More than happy to help and clear up anything. You've got this video to refer to as well. Please do use this as well, just try and learn and develop your own knowledge from it if you are still struggling very slightly. To try and rewatch this video and look at the examples from the board brief, and then look at the examples that we've actually physically flown, and then hopefully you'll be a master of tracking NDBs and VORs. So we'll leave it there. Please rewatch the video if you're still not too sure, and feel free to drop me a message or any other mentor, and we'll be more than happy to help.